Hello everyone, watch this review here where they look at Ken Masters from NECA's Street Fighter 4 line. Now I picked this figure up loose, and like almost every figure I do end up buying loose, I ultimately end up regretting it somehow. Now I paid $10 and then $2.50 for shipping and handling for this. I figured, it's not a bad price considering these figures originally retailed for $15. Cut to me walking into my local Toys R Us today and finding out that NECA has reissued a lot of the line. Instead of doing their big double clamshells like they used to do, it's on a regular kind of card like you see for a lot of their lines, and more importantly it's $10, so for an extra $3 I bought something used. Yeah, not cool. Now this figure does come with some accessories, 2 accessories to be precise, and that's an alternate pair of hands, including a closed fist for the thumbs up sign, and then another closed fist identical to this one. At first I thought the seller had made a mistake, but no, apparently their actual release includes a second closed fist for his right hand for no reason. Now, given that they're interchangeable, you just pull it out, and voila. I'm not going to be switching it. Now, if you're a fan of Ken Masters and do want a figure of him, you actually have quite a few options. Soda, who previously handled the Street Fighter license, had a bunch of figures, all sort of varying qualities. Kyoto even did a Rebel Tech of him for Street Fighter Online, the Mouse Generation, a computer game that was a fighting title, but meant to be played with your mouse. And that would be your computer mouse, not your pet mouse. They're still working on the one for the pet mouse, very tentative release date, because it caters to a relatively small demographic, mice being relatively small animals. Oh, by the way, as for the name Ken Masters, in the original games he did not have a last name, but when they were licensing the characters for figures originally, supposedly, as the story goes, might be an urban legend, might not, don't really care, it's because it's a cool story, they ended up giving him a last name just solely so he wouldn't be confused with another Ken that already had a ton of dolls, and that would be the Barbie's boyfriend. And if you look at him, yeah, he possibly could pass for Barbie's boyfriend. Blonde, really good looking dude, buff, yeah. Alright, yeah, got really sidetracked there for a moment, but bullet point, there is a figure for Ken, pretty much any style you want, most scales and so forth, although, it's just kind of tough to find ones that really look great, and also ones that are sort of reasonably priced. The Rebel Tech ones do tend to be pretty pricey, and then a lot of the other Soda ones also are quite a bit more expensive, especially mint on card at this point. But I mean, he's had everything from a G.I. Joe figure to, 12-inch releases, I believe. I didn't have him for the G.I. Joe line. I had Dollism, yes, or Dalsim. I don't even know how his name's pronounced. Ryu, and then of course M. Bison, who is one of my other favorite characters. But yeah, Ken, M. Bison, 2 favorite Street Fighter characters. A little bit of trivia for you. If there's ever a quiz, there won't ever be a quiz. But onto this figure itself, very mixed feelings. On the one hand, I think that they did some things admirably well. On the other hand, some things just kind of lousy. Now, from the waist up and then also the feet, it kind of looks like they ripped the image directly from the game. I mean, it looks really close to the in-game graphics, or at least what I remember them, and captures the whole sort of blocky aesthetic very well. Because, the things in the game weren't like as sleek as some of the previous releases. Legs here, looks like it was just ripped from like the laziest wrestling line. Just really generic legs, and I absolutely hate the way that they handle the knees. You just don't get that much sculpting, the paint isn't even as nice, and everything just kind of crappy. The things that really sort of bug me about this figure, though, are just, first off, you have this huge gap here in the shoulders. Look at that. And there are a lot of poses that he just can't do because that whole thing would be visible. Now, other figures or lines have handled this by just putting something in there for the joint so you can't really see a gap. They did nothing, which is lame. Also, it's got a ton of exposed pin joints. Usually doesn't bother me so much because it's just like on the sides of arms and like the knees and stuff, where half the time you won't really notice it, but when you toss it up here on the shoulder it becomes really visible and it is kind of ugly. Other thing that I don't quite like is just the fact that he's got like all this thigh movement and stuff here where you have this really awkward shape or whatever that's sort of jetting out there. I don't know. I mean, the one upside though is it's not as visible. Then of course I have a minor issue where one of his legs doesn't have the forward motion on the foot. I believe the previous owner only used him really for display, and because a lot of the joints weren't even broken in. I mean, he's got a lot of articulation. Doesn't always look good with some of it, and unfortunately, just due to the sculpt, a lot of the poses that you try to get him in may be a little bit on the difficult side. Like, for example, I was just trying to figure out how to get him to do like a sort of sweeping motion where, you know, they try to trip the opponents with the legs in the games. And couldn't really figure out a way to do it. Other thing is, I really wish they would have given him like an open hand pair of hands there for grappling poses. I mean, it would have definitely made more sense, especially in the case of this hand where you just got a second copy of the one you already had. I mean, even another thumbs up one would have been neat, because then you can go kind of an RVD pose. Should have been cool. Of course, I do love the head sculpt here, which just really captures a lot of the campy nature that the character has assumed at times, and you know, it's just kind of a really wicked pose. Although, granted, some poses can make him look kind of douchey. This one, for instance, you know, just kind of screams I'm a jerk, as opposed to a lot of the ones where he's just kind of like this, and it's sort of more of a cocky, self-assured fighter angle. Before I forget, quick run through of articulation. Here at the wrists or hands, we have sort of ball and socket wrists, where you get a full range of rotation. Now, if you don't have it pushed in all the way, you'll also get that really annoying sort of creaking noise. And then in addition to a forward back, but it's not a tremendous amount, mostly due to the sculpt and the bracelets or whatever here. Double pin joint here at the elbow. Rotation at bicep, ball jointed shoulder. Now we have shoulders that pop out, or for what you call that additional joint there. I mean, it's kind of cool, but I really can't think of a lot of poses I could toss them in where, you know, that would look sort of natural. You know, the character generally doesn't have like a lot of poses where he just extends his shoulders back and stuff, so it's a little funky. Head is ball jointed, but it just doesn't really get a ton of up-down motion. It's a lot more down than up. So I mean, he can't really be looking up when he goes for like one of his special attacks or whatever. I was gonna start to call it a Shoryuken, but then I always get that in the Shoryuken confused. The Dragon Punch and, you know, the Fireball. We have an ab crunch, somewhat impeded by the vest. Or sorry, kimono. The kimono is removable if you really wanted to, but you'd have to sort of damage it. It's not meant to be removed, but I've seen other videos which explain that you can just pull it apart and you can sort of get it off fairly easily. No, I forget what the method is, but either way, you probably don't want to be trying that. leg is on the sort of standard like DC method, where instead of having a physical ball joint, you have the whole mess of different joints, but forward back motion, kicks out, point of rotation up here at the bicep, at the thigh, double joint here at the knee, not a very flattering one. And then at the ankle we have forward back, very small amount, then a side pivot, which is a lot more generous, which, you know, it's a nice thing to have, then a toe joint. The only sort of downside is, you know, mine doesn't work on this side, so I can't do left kicking poses, because typically when somebody kicks somebody, they use the ball of their foot, not the front of it. But yeah, I guess you can kind of finagle that however you want. Paint-wise, you know, just a ton of paint work on the flesh portions, where you'll have a nice mix of colors. The top of the kimono here has shadowing and stuff, but the bottom part, it just doesn't have the same amount of sculpting and detail as this, which is kind of a shame. All in all, I mean, I guess this is probably the most affordable option for people looking for a figure of this character at this point, and should at least be somewhat available. Now, I mean, the original release may not be, just because all I saw in stores for like the variants and stuff from like the Wave 2 or whatever, including him in a purple kimono and I forget, I think maybe it was like white hair or something. It was really weird. But I mean, now that they have those sort of reissued player selects, which isn't just specific to the Street Fighter franchise, I actually saw it for several other characters. But I mean, otherwise, you know, you could probably find some of the Soda ones loose. The Revoltech ones, again, probably are going to be a bit rarer, a bit more pricey, but they look very cool. But Revoltech and I just don't have that great of a, well, I guess a history, just because I don't really like how the revolver joint actually looks for a lot of the poses, because it's this really gaudy joint, circular joint, as seen right here. And they use it for everything. All in all, you know, pretty decent figure, but this has been a look at NECA's Street Fighter 4 Ken from, I don't know what the original make was. This might have been the original issued one, might be the reissue. You know, for what it is, you know, it does work, and, you know, this will be probably the most faithful rendition of the Street Fighter 4 look. I mean, if you're into, like, other looks for the character, I believe the Soda ones did have some more of the sleek looking versions, so, you know, just a lot slimmer character and stuff, not as overly muscle bound as this one is. I mean, it just sort of depends on what your favorite impression is, or, you know, just, I don't know, it's just when you have characters like this that have so many different interpretations available, including a teenage version. If you ever saw Street Fighter 5, it was Street Fighter 2V, the anime, I think this was called. I don't know, but that was a really cool anime, by the way. I'll probably link to the Wikipedia page in the details below. I mean, whereas you have a character who has been portrayed in so many different ways, you also have, you know, a lot of figures where they do have those multiple interpretations. Personally, I don't know what my favorite interpretation of the character would be, although I loved the anime for the one where they were just kids and stuff. I didn't so much like the movie animes that they made for some of the other ones, because the art wasn't as good and the story kind of sucked. But I mean, this is probably going to be the best rendition you'll see for the Street Fighter 4 version. I'm not sure what it's going to look like in the inevitable Street Fighters 5 through a million, but, you know, for me, it kind of works. I'm also just hoping that they reissue the M. Bison at some point. Did they not? I don't think they did an M. Bison. No, the M. Bison was Soda, but I'm hoping that there will be a full-size M. Bison available at some point. I mean, they keep releasing Akuma, but, you know, M. Bison kind of fallen out of vogue, so they have a bigger badass now. But yeah, this has been a look at Ken from NECA's Street Fighter 4 line. Till next time, folks.